Hello, and good morning. My name is Nicholas William Cutler. 3,000 days ago, I made my very first video and uploaded it to Facebook. 90 days later, I made my YouTube channel, which some of you might be watching this on. 3,000 days from that first day, we're here. I really don't know where to start with this, other than going with what I know. And what I do know is, well, technically I already did, I just said hello. But also, happy Thursday, everyone. And welcome to the State of My Being address. However, this one is very significant. As I rather unambiguously said in the beginning, as well as the title on YouTube will suggest, I've been doing this for 3,000 days. And while I always believed I'd make it here, believing that you make it to something and actually getting to that point really are different things. Never did I ever think I'd be feeling so much emotion over this. In a good way, of course. Because there really is a lot to go over. And if I'm going to go over it, I think I better get comfortable. As well as maybe switch the phone a bit. There we go. Again, where do I start? Well, obviously, there is a lot that's happened, not just in these last 100 days, but this set of 1,000 days. And it'd be very difficult to go over everything because obviously I can't remember everything. Although I do want to emphasize this. The first time I got to a set of 1,000 days is in day 1,000, back in September of 2020. That was actually so long I had to break it into two parts. On day 2,000, I remember that video taking pretty much an entire day to upload. And I was not happy about that. Hopefully third time will be the charm. As well as, don't worry, I hope to not really make this too long. Hopefully it won't be too long. It certainly won't be an hour and a half, I can tell you that. Because, frankly, I don't have the time and I'm pretty sure we all have things to do. Now then. For the last several weeks, I really was thinking about what I would talk about for this. Because, again, it's day 3,000. I mean, surely I would have to have something pretty special for this, right? And in a way, I would say that I do. Because I have noticed a theme with each set of 1,000 days that passes. Each set of 1,000 days, day 1,000, day 2,000, now today, which is day 3,000. Well, how do I say this? There have been similar things that have happened. And by similar things, I mean, if I really broke each of those sets of 1,000 days down, I can pinpoint what they all had in common. One thing they all had in common is each set of 1,000 days was not without its fair share of less than desirable days. You know, take the first set of 1,000 days, for example. You know, I had to go to Denver, Colorado for 3 months because I was too skinny. You know, my grandfather on my mother's side passed away. And little would anyone know, we'd be going through a global pandemic. And take the second set of 1,000 days. We were still in the pandemic. On top of that, you know, I probably spent a good 9 months feeling so incredibly heartbroken that I pretty much let that heartbreak dictate what I did and how I feel. As well as the fact that my grandmother, also on my mother's side, passed away. And even in this set of 1,000 days, you know, it really is a big wake-up call when you're crying in your car on Valentine's Day, wondering if, you know, why no girl's ever going to like you. And yeah, my grandmother on my father's side passed away. So there's a lot of other bad stuff that happened too, to be sure. I mean, arguments with parents, missed opportunities, just a lot. However, each of those sets of 1,000 days also had some good things. I mean, think of it this way. You wouldn't have any days at all if I didn't take that leap of faith on January 1st, 2018, making that first not even 2-minute video and then putting it on Facebook. You wouldn't have that at all. I mean, it started off as a New Year's resolution, and you know, I'll make a video every day. And, you know, worst case scenario, I got people telling me, hey, listen, you gotta stop. We don't like what you're doing. And I'd acquiesce, and I would just stop. But that never happened. You know, 3,000 days later, it's highly unlikely it's ever going to happen. So that's a good thing. Certainly not leaving for that. What else? Well, in 2019, I was introduced to what's my all-time favorite show, Amphibia. Yes, a Disney show about anthropomorphic amphibians is my favorite show of all time. Hey, listen, crazier things have happened. Shout out to Matt Brawley for making such an amazing show. Thank you. Actually, you know, your show actually got me through a lot of tough times. So, thank you. Not to mention, you know, there was a period of time where, because of the pandemic, I wouldn't go to the movies anymore. But that came about again. You know, not to mention, since making my videos, I've been to technically I went to 4, but that first wedding I went to was so bad, I really don't want to get into it. Yeah, I went to a wedding that was so bad that, for real, I actually almost gave up on love forever. Can you believe that? But, you know, That was late 2018. And over that time, I've been to 3 weddings. Each one got better and better. And I went from believing that, that's not going to be me up there and it never will be, to thinking that may not be me up there, but someday it will be. At least, that's my hope anyway. And not to mention, the birthdays I've had have been... Seriously, full stop, in 2018, everybody forgot my birthday. In 2019, my grandfather, who had passed away just over 3 weeks later, said he was disappointed in me. In 2020, I had to deal with someone who really was a complete jerk. And thankfully he's dead now, so there you go. And I actually had to deal with him again. So that was something. But in 2022, I've just been having better and better birthdays. I mean, granted, me having a great birthday really isn't hard, Just take me to Libs and that's my happy birthday right there, Shout out to Libs Supper Club in Elmira. But I usually feel that the greatest difference from where I started to where I am right now is the desire for growth and adapting. I mean, I went from being in my late 20s, living with my parents, and now for the last 6 years, 7 years almost, I've been on my own, living in an apartment. And on top of that, I finally did what I should have done. Actually, I would have done this years ago, but again, the pandemic really messed up a lot of things. And that's just going out more. I actually had this conversation with my mother on Valentine's Day, just recently. And she said, obviously she knows that, I'd like to have a girlfriend. I'd like to be in a relationship. And there's one thing she's never wavered from. And I'll get to more of that in a few minutes. I'll get to more of that later. But yeah, she believes I'll find someone. To which I said, I believe you, but I'm not going to find her simply by doing nothing. I have to go out and see people. And maybe, hopefully, I'll find her when I go out. It sounds silly, but yeah. Have I found this person? Well, technically, yes, I have, but now I just actually have to get over my fear of rejection and just, ask her, Yeah, I'm definitely that kind of person, all right. And that's easily what led to what I want to talk about today, which is the desire for growth and adapting. Because within this set of 1,000 days, I really do feel that I've experienced the greatest amount of growth and change that I think I've ever gone through up to this point in my life. At least in terms of, having things that really are desirable and are definitely a lot of fun too. Because, as I said earlier, you're not going to get what you want simply by doing nothing. You're not. You know, if it was that simple, everybody would do it. And that's not how it works. So, I started going out to places like Illegal Tap House and Nick's Pub and Grill or Pick's Pub or Harry's or the other. Just simply going to places where I know there'd be people around. And if I was lucky, there'd be people that I'd see. I mean, again, yeah, I could simply wait for an opportunity where there's something big going on that all my family goes to, and I could see maybe one or two people that I know. Or I could simply do it myself, and you know what? Sometimes instead of seeing maybe one or two people I know, I see a lot more than one or two people, I can tell you that. And it really started to hit me how much this was making me feel better around April of 2023. I'll never forget what happened. It was a Saturday going into Sunday. There was actually a concert from a really talented musician in this area who was going to be performing at Rye Bar in Elmira. Shout out to Rye Bar. And there was a couple that I know who was there, and I thought I'd see them, but I missed them. However, what wound up happening was I ran into someone who I hadn't seen since I graduated from high school. And, we talked, we caught up. I asked how his family was doing, And I'll never forget what happened that next morning as I was making that very video. And I remember talking about just how much, how satisfied I was feeling. How, doing this stuff and doing it on my own. There's something to be said about the level of satisfaction you get when you accomplish these things. I mean, yes, at the end of the day, of course it's ideal that you want to have people in your life to help you and, get you through things. I'm always going to have my family, but, here's the thing. My family will always be in here. But there will be times when physically they're not able to be there. And it's hard when that happens. It absolutely is. And I think that's a worry that everybody has. But I can genuinely say that the more I do things on my own, going out and seeing people, as well as, cooking for myself, or, having a routine that fits me, going to the lake in the summer, going to church twice a weekend when I'm not at Becuca Lake, seeing my family whenever possible, on days I know I can see them. That feeling of loneliness just seems to die down. I mean, it's still there, and I acknowledge that it's there, but it doesn't make me feel worried or concerned. Sorry, cars with sirens. Yep, okay. I can always tell here's the thing, if ever I see sirens go by, I'm like, is it a fire truck or is it a police car or an ambulance? And if I can see the car through my second floor window, it's a fire truck. In this case, it was a fire truck. Okay, that's what I was talking about. I was going to say, I'm actually kind of glad there is that sense of loneliness. because, at least for me, it makes me all the more determined to do what I do. You know, it makes me more determined for people to see me. It makes me all the more determined for people to understand who I am and, you know, where I come from. I mean, my mom, funny enough, my mom actually did, I've shared this story before, but once upon a time, my mom and I were arguing about that I'm not being transparent in my videos. I'm like, I don't think you know what transparent means. Oh gosh. But yeah. In fact, it's through this growth and change that I started doing something that I guess in the back of my mind I had considered doing, but it wouldn't be until 2025 when I started this. And that was my 2025 bucket list. Now this year will be my 2026 bucket list. Because in 2024, a lot of people were complaining how quote unquote bad of a year it was. And if you were to say it was a bad year, I really wouldn't argue with you, because that year wasn't without its fair share of problems. You know, 2024 was the year I cried in my car on Valentine's Day thinking what a loser I am. 2024 was the year that my grandmother on my father's side passed away. You know, those already I mean, if I looked at 2024 through just that lens, yeah, it would be a bad year. Or I can try and do something that led to the formation of my bucket list, which was try and remember all the good things that happened in 2024. And as it turns out, there was a lot of really great things I did in 2024. In fact, it got to the point where, you know, if I forgot something, I probably forgot a couple things. I probably did forget a couple things that were great and that were awesome that I'm glad I went to do. So, yeah. That's why I have the bucket list. Not only to say that not only because it gives me something to do and look forward to, but, you know, when come December 31st, you know, I'll be able to say this year I did all of these things. And I was able to do that for 2025. And so far in 2026, it looks like I'm going to be able to do just that. Granted, I did miss eating ice cream on National Ice Cream for Breakfast on National Eat Ice Cream for Breakfast Day. I did miss that. But you know what? No year, I mean, 2025 wasn't perfect, and I would still say it was the best year ever. So, who's to say 2026 won't be in a similar vein? And if nothing else, the one thing that's really changed, the one thing, I wouldn't say it's changed, but it's definitely something that I know life would not be as good without. And that's the people. Whether I've known, you know, some people for many, many, many years, or I only just started to get to know them in a couple of years. Without them, I don't think life really would seem as grand. And if any of you guys are watching this, then you know who you are. So, to the good folks of the 607, as well as my brothers from Trinity Poly. Oh yeah, that's right. I went to my 15-year reunion at Trinity Poly in 2024. Actually, you know what? Speaking of 2024, there were two really big things that, if they didn't work out, I really do think 2024 really would have been lost. Which was going to my 15-year reunion, and I went back to Colorado for the first time since having gone there for, you know, being too skinny. I went to the top of, I climbed the top of Shrine Pass to scatter my grandmother's ashes. I saw the Tedeschi Trucks Band at Red Rocks. I went to my 15-year reunion in Trinity Pawling, and I wound up seeing people I hadn't seen in years that really did fill me with a lot of joy, because I miss them. Yeah. There's a lot of people I miss. Thankfully, there are many people that I know that I could go and see, but there's also people that have, sadly passed on. I literally just went to, the calling hours of someone from my graduating class just a couple weekends ago. I mentioned there was a friend of mine who I hadn't seen since graduating high school at Rye Bar. This person's brother passed away, who I knew as well. And whether it's my grandfather on my mother's side, my grandmother on my mother's side, or my grandmother on my father's side, of course I wish they were still here. And I do still think about them. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of people who, I've known over the years that have sadly, passed on. Even before I started making videos. But rather than focus on being sad that they're gone, it's motivated me more and more to go out and see the other people that I know and to be with the other people that I know. Which is yet another reason why, I go out, Friday, Saturday nights, actually, as my mom once put it, make a few rounds. Which, if you want to call it that, go right ahead. Speaking of which, I'm absolutely positive that I really wouldn't be here without my family, both literally and figuratively. I said earlier that my parents, specifically my mother, have never wavered on one thing, and that was the belief that I have a lot to offer. I don't know what it is, but I do know when I started seeing that myself. And it goes back to the story I talked about back in April of 2023, when I saw my friend I hadn't seen for years at Rye. Next day I made that video. I was talking about how overjoyed I was. What you didn't see was, after I turned off the camera, I don't know why this happened, but I began to cry. And it was a happy cry. Because I thought I came to a realization about something. Of course, I should have realized what it was, and I had an idea of what it was in that moment, but, I can't be too sure. So I went to the one person who I could ask about, who could actually give me a good answer and, not judge me if it was a dumb question. So I asked my mom. And what I asked her was this feeling of like satisfaction and, being happy doing what I'm doing. Is this what self-love is? And she said, yeah. Yeah, it is. And don't misunderstand me. I myself have a lot of work to do. Pretty sure we all do. And while I definitely have an idea what self-love is, I still got a ways to go before I could really say, well, actually that's not, I do love myself, I do feel self-love, but I could still work on it a little bit more. I'll say that. Because, come on. Why else would I ask a question like that if I, didn't already know the answer, So thanks, Mom. It's funny. Sometimes I picture myself like giving a giant speech in front of a crowd that's like where I achieve something really important. And, my mom and dad are in the audience, and I say what I just told you about the one thing that my mom never wavered from was the fact that, I had a lot to offer. And I'll be like, I really hope this is what you were talking about because I don't know if I can do better than this. So again, thanks, Mom. And thanks, Dad. For, you know what, I will say this. Growing up, I really never liked going to church. But I definitely have a greater appreciation for it now, and I guess I don't think I'd have that without you. Plus, you've given me everything I need for what being, a good man should be, and what a good father should be. If I ever have kids that day, if I ever have kids and, they wind up completely disliking me, but I turn out to be, half as good of a dad as you, I consider myself doing okay. Because I know what I would have done for my kids. And speaking of someone who knows what he does for his kids, there's my brother. I've often made a joke that our personalities are so different that you're going to like or dislike me for the exact opposite reason you like or dislike my brother. And yeah, I do feel we have different personalities. But whoever said that's a bad thing? If anything, if we were both the same, I think life would be pretty boring, don't you think? And in the years since, back in 2016, when you got married, I literally saw you become a husband and father. And in some cases, an uncle, to your wife's side. Well, speaking of which, to my sister and, my sister. Because I know the PC term is sister-in-law, but yeah, she's my sister, through and through. You don't need blood to be related. So yeah, she's totally my sister. Well, for starters, thank you for putting up with my brother. Lord knows that someone had to. I've said this before. July 2nd, 2016, I remember being completely miserable that entire day. But the one truly beautiful thing about that day was your union. The union of husband and wife that, you and my brother. My brother and my sister, sister-in-law, but still. Yeah, I think I know. And now I kind of see why I do have to say sister-in-law. But yeah, like that union remains the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Full stop. Granted, I've seen a lot of beautiful things too, for sure. A lot of really beautiful things. And yeah, if I really thought about it, maybe they'd be the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But they don't hold the candle to you guys getting married. And I've seen the two of you become husband and wife and parents. Which brings me to my three nephews. Paxton Edward Cutler, Miles Asher Cutler, and my godson, Chase Timothy Cutler. I don't know if your parents are letting you watch any of my videos, but yes, I'm weird. But much like being different, being weird, not a bad thing. Being who you are is not a bad thing. Having emotion is not a bad thing. Existing is not a bad thing. I thank God every day that I became an uncle to three really good boys. Oh, don't get me wrong. They're a handful sometimes, to be sure. But you know what? They're kids. Let them be kids. And, if I ever have kids who turn out even half as good as you three boys, I'll be happy. I mean, of course you're good boys. Because you're raised by two great parents. And I know they're great parents because I've known them for years. One of which I've known my entire life. So I know. So, needless to say, I love you all very much. Again, they're only like 6 and 4 right now, so they don't necessarily have an idea what this is about, how to have or express those emotions yet. But they will. And it's a difficult process. It takes a long time. It's different. The time it takes for people to understand the significance of something, it's different for everybody. I didn't really feel anything like that until, in my, early teens. Of course, knowing how good my nephews are, they'll figure that out a lot sooner than that. I hope they do. And I want to say this as well. There's something to be said about how just right having this video on this day is. Because, we're still in the month of March. I get to wear this tie. That's pretty special. And we just had St. Patrick's Day on Tuesday. And we just had St. Patrick. Yeah, seriously, there have been a lot of really great holidays over these last 1,000 days. And ever since I made my, bucket list for 2025 and 2026, I really do feel that they've only gotten better. So, yeah. Why stop doing that? But speaking of significant days, tomorrow is actually the first day of spring. Yeah, March 20th, 2026 will be the first day of spring for this year. I mean, don't get too excited. The weather still indicates it's going to be really cold and kind of dreary, I guess. But you know what? It doesn't matter. As of tomorrow, you can say we're officially in spring. I keep telling people, just make it to March, you have a chance. And, not only are we in March, we made it to late March. Which reminds me, March Madness should be happening right now. That's exciting. College Wrestling National Championships, that's happening this weekend too. Seriously, just in the rest of 2026 alone, there is so much to look forward to. I mean, we're in Lent currently, so Easter's around the corner, Mother's Day is around the corner, Father's Day is around the corner, Independence Day, Labor Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all of summer to have fun and do things. The many opportunities for things to happen, like, concerts and parties and just simply going out and having fun. And the movies, obviously. Like, the only movie I've seen so far was Hoppers, which was great. But there's lots of other movies coming out this year, too. I mean, I just saw this trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day. That already looks cool. It looks fun. I'd check it out. And also Toy Story 5 and Avengers Doomsday. And some other shows I still watch, like The Masked Singer. Don't worry, I'll talk about The Masked Singer in tomorrow's video. That video is also improving because I gotta talk about Hot Ones too. And Hot Ones, there's a new episode of Hot Ones today. I'm gonna talk about Hot Ones. Luke Combs is gonna be on. That's gonna be awesome. And some things are still yet to come. I know are coming. Again, there's some items on my 2026 bucket list I'm not gonna be able to check off until December, but I know they're coming. So there. Not to mention One Piece. We're in the Elbaf arc in One Piece right now. My gosh. I remember when I first started making videos, we were just finishing Whole Cake Island and starting Wano. We're in Elbaf finally. That's insane. And not to mention, the person I've been watching since, August of 2009, Chucker Conroy, I really could just spend the rest of this time talking about all the great LPs he's done alone. He's done several Pokemon games. He finally did Twilight Princess, which was the game I've always wanted to see him do. And, what could he do after Twilight Princess? Well, he could play Kingdom Hearts, of course. Chucker Conroy doing Kingdom Hearts? What is it coming to? That's insane. But I got to see that, man. Again, yeah, there have been some less than desirable things that have happened in these last 1,000 days, but it certainly didn't come without a lot of high points. All the times I went to see bands see Claudia Heuser, or Blue Eyed Soul, or Kill Rush, or Bad Bear, or Top Shelf, or Peyton Clark. Shout out to any of those bands and people. You guys are awesome, talented performers. We got Dragon Ball coming back. Dragon Ball is coming back. I mean, We just had Dragon Ball Daima. I mean, yeah, that was another undesirable thing that happened, the sad passing of Akira Toriyama. But Dragon Ball Daima, that was great. And as a Dragon Ball fan, it gave us probably the greatest Kamehameha we've ever seen. And Super Saiyan 4 is canon. Yeah. Gosh. I have to say, this set of 1,000 days really has been kind to me. Extraordinarily so. In fact, and I know where it's come from too. It's what I said earlier. Growth, change, and adapting to it. I mean, they say that after a period of like 4 or 5 years, you find yourself that you're a different person after that point than you were in the beginning. And granted, 1,000 days isn't quite 3 years. I still notice a difference. I feel as if I'm a much different person now than I was, back in, I think it was June of 2023 when I did day 2,000. And now here I am. So, trying to think if there's anything else I need to say. Oh yeah, right. Back to Chuck Connor, he's doing Heart Gold Soul Silver now. Never thought he'd do that, but okay. Cool. Yeah, man. I mean, listen. Obviously, in this crazy thing that we call life, your results are going to vary, for sure. In fact, it's quite possible that, it really is possible, by the way, that I really could have done everything that made me happy or good, and I still wouldn't feel satisfied. I mean, obviously that's not what happened, but that's still possible. In fact, if Rick and Morty taught me anything, I'm sure there's an alternate reality out there that, yeah, I'm still miserable. I am miserable, even having done all the things that I've done. But that's not me. The me you all have is staring at an iPhone camera right now, making a video that is going to be pushing 50 minutes. And that's kind of meant to be on purpose because since today's 3,000, since it's day 3,000 today, how funny would it be if I actually made a video that was 3,000 seconds long? We have less than 60 until we get to 3,000, so you know what? I think it's a better time to... there's actually a lot I didn't talk about. Like all the football games I saw that were great, basketball games, wrestling, softball. There's so much that happened. Obviously, there's no way I get to remember it all. But I can tell you right now, if you know me and you saw me, you know who you are, and I know for a fact you guys made it better. So, I can genuinely tell you all that I'm very humble I made this video. I made 3,000 plus videos for all of you guys who watch and enjoy for today. I hope we have a wonderful last day of winter. Have a wonderful Thursday, first day of spring tomorrow. Remember, if any of you all want to talk or chat, I'm always going to get to lend you. Always have your back. Take care and make good choices. 607 all day, baby. And now to end it with saying I love you all, 3,000.